welcome to the BPD Bunch Brunch, where we get together with our favorite brunchy beverages to catch up, play games, and talk about all things BPD. I'm your host, Xannie, and today I am here with Mo and Katja, and the three of us are going to be interviewing Kylee Rackam, who is a mental health content creator who emphasizes on narcissistic personality disorder. So where in the world is everyone coming from today, and what is your brunchy beverage?
I'm from Central Ohio in the U.S., and I'm drinking tea.
Wait, what does your mug say? Does it say help on it?
No, it just says hers. It says hers. We have a red one that says his. So that would be funny, though. That would be genius.
I thought it just said help, exclamation point.
That would be great.
We should put a mug like that in the store. Okay.
I'm joining from West Midlands, United Kingdom, and I have grapefruit juice in an interestingly textured cup.
I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm drinking Dr. Pepper, strawberries and cream.
Wait, strawberries and cream is a flavor?
The best. I love it.
I have to try that now.
So
I'm so
good.
excited. I'm coming from New Mexico in the United States, and I'm finishing up my coffee, and then I have a pot of herbal tea. So we are in for the long haul. So to start us off, Kylee, can you give us a little backstory just about like your mental health journey up to this point, just so people have an idea about your story?
Yeah, so I've been in and out of therapy since I was 12 years old. I've had the whole depression, anxiety diagnosis. Then in 2020, I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And in January of this year, I got diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. My BPD is currently in remission and it's managed, and now I'm working on my MPD.
So what were some of the things that led to your various diagnoses?
Well, for my BPD, it's because I was just so out of control and erratic, and I was constantly just didn't know why I was having all these mood swings and all of these self-destructive behaviors. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And I actually researched BPD beforehand, and I was like, I resonate with this a lot, and I feel like I should talk to someone about it. So I went to a psych and was like, hey, I think I might have this. Can you like evaluate me? And she was a specialist, and she did, and she said I met the criteria. And for MPD, my partner was actually the one who suggested for me to bring it up to my psych. He works in the mental health field and he has MPD clients, and he was like, hey, you have symptoms of this and you might want to talk to your psych about it. And so I brought it up to her, and she was like, actually, I had already been evaluating you for a few months now. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm diagnosed with that.
So is having more than one personality disorder even more challenging? And if so, how do you deal with the emotions that come with that?
I would say having more than one isn't more challenging, but it does require more problems that I have to deal with that someone with one personality disorder doesn't. So with my BPD, I also have the entitlement and the ego of the MPD, and those two play off each other, and that can get kind of confusing and convoluted at times.
As compared to like how you experience them internally versus like dealing with the world, is there a difference in like which one is more difficult symptomatically versus like which one is more difficult in terms of dealing with stigma?
I think both of them are difficult symptomatically, but as far as the stigma goes, they both have stigmas for different reasons. I think the narcissist stigma is a lot more prevalent because it's in everybody's vocabulary nowadays. You ask anyone about their dating history, chances are they'll call someone a narcissist, like they have an ex who's a narcissist, and chances are they're not even diagnosed. So I get a lot of backlash and hate for that. And when I was solely a BPD creator, I was getting met with so much positivity and sympathy and just understanding. And when I revealed my MPD diagnosis, I was suddenly hit with so much hate and vitriol and just people saying I'll never change, I'll never get better. And it was this like whole different like outlook on things that I was not prepared for and was not expecting. So that was something that was hard to deal with, and I'm still processing that.
Negativity is hard. I think that being compared to exes, like we as like BPD creators don't get that as much, but we do get a little bit of that. The whole like, well, my ex was like this, so you're like this too. So it's like, geez. You've seen like 30 seconds of a video. What do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can relate to a certain degree. Obviously not to the extent that you get it, Kylee, but I'm just wondering, how do you actually cope with that level of negativity?
So right when I got my MPD diagnosis, I basically hopped on the internet and made a video about it, which was kind of a bad idea in hindsight because I was met with so much of, well, you're never going to change. Narcissists are bad. They're evil. They're demonic. And I was like, wow, this new diagnosis and everyone hates me. I guess I'm not going to change. And I internalized that for a few months and had an identity crisis. And now I'm starting to see and like try to like peel myself back from it and be like, no, the people that comment these things, they don't know me. They're looking at a 30-second video of me and they're projecting their own experiences onto me. And I have to remember that these are strangers and I am working on myself behind the scenes. I am in therapy. And so if they want to project hate onto me, they can. They don't know me. They don't know my journey.
What did your loved ones say when you told them? I'm assuming you told them.
Yeah, so my partner was the one who pushed me to get my MPD diagnosis. So when I told him, he was like, yeah, I knew. But he was a little bit wary at first. He has ASPD though. He has antisocial personality disorder, which is the clinical term for sociopath. So he has his own personality disorder and he gets met with a lot of hate online too as well. And so our relationship is a lot different than a typical dynamic because we both have personality disorders that are very severe. My family, they were just kind of like, oh, okay, you're a narcissist, cool. They have mental health issues of their own, and we have similar symptoms in the family. And so they understood me and they accepted me with no judgment.
There's sort of a stereotype that, you know, people with NPD don't accept their diagnosis. It's like, you know, that's what people say is like one of the hallmark features. If someone's a narcissist, they won't ever admit that they're a narcissist. So I'm curious, like, what do you think? Well, first of all, what do you think about that sentiment? And was there anything that prepared you for being able to accept it more easily than maybe somebody else?
So I get 3 statements a lot online whenever I make MPD videos. Narcissists don't know they're narcissists, narcissists weaponize therapy, and narcissists, if you question if you're a narcissist, that means you're not one. All of those are false. I questioned for years if I was a narcissist. I was told all my life that I was cold, manipulative, and cruel, and I was always wondering why. And when I got my BPD diagnosis, it made a little bit more sense, but I still felt like something was off. And so when I got my MPD diagnosis, I was like, okay, this fills in a lot of the blanks here. And so I did question for a long time, and I am in therapy and I am working on myself. So the whole rhetoric that the MPD abuse creators like make, it's a lot of stigma that's perpetuating a harmful narrative of misinformation essentially. So I don't believe in those statements because at the end of the day, I'm a person, I'm not a robot. Just because I have a disorder doesn't mean I'm not capable of reflection and self-introspection.
Kylee, while you were speaking, I was also thinking about some of the other things that people have brought up online, and one of those is the fact that you are self-aware, which is fantastic. You are actively working towards recovery. But for those people who are in abusive or harmful relationships with people with narcissistic personality disorder or suspect that that person has NPD, how do you balance sharing your journey with people pinning their hopes on the person that they love with NPD is going to change? Do you ever worry that it's giving them false hope, possibly?
So I want to say that if the person isn't diagnosed, you can armchair diagnose them, but the label does not matter. The behaviors are what matters. If someone is treating you badly, you should not tolerate mistreatment. If they have NPD, you shouldn't wait around for someone to change. My final straw to what led me getting treatment was being abused by another narcissist, heavily abused, and that was what led me to getting therapy and actually getting better. That person probably would never have changed. I do not advocate for, if you're in a relationship with someone with NPD, to wait around and hope that eventually they might see the error of their ways. I get DMs every day of people being like, oh, I'm with someone with NPD and they're not really self-aware and they're treating me badly and I just feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. What do I do? Are they going to change? I see your videos and it makes me have hope. And it's like, if they're treating you badly, you should not stay. Ask yourself why you want to stay in a relationship with someone who is treating you like that. Why you think it's okay to accept that behavior. Why it's okay to make someone have you feel that way. That's something that you should be looking at internally and not at the other person, because at the end of the day, bad behavior is bad behavior and no disorder should excuse that.
That's perfect. I love that.
Although I'm sure it's not to the same degree. I've also had, people say similar things to us, and it's the same answer. It's like, whether somebody has a diagnosis or not, why would you want to wait around for someone who has clearly demonstrated to you that they have no intention of being any different, right?
I think it's because with disorders, they almost get a hall pass because it's like, oh, this person has a disorder, therefore they're going to have these symptoms. And that almost gives them more leeway to be like, hey, you know, they can work on it and they can get better. But at the end of the day, bad behavior is bad behavior. It doesn't matter.
Just because everyone can doesn't mean that everyone will.
Have you ever tried to make amends with people? And if you have, how did it go? If people had a negative reaction to it, like, how did you cope and how did you move forward from that?
I have made amends with people that I've hurt. It took me going into therapy. So for a few people, it took a few years for me to reach out, but I have made amends and all of them forgave me except one. One of them never responded. I hope they're all doing well and I wish them well from afar. I don't have any of them in my life currently. But I used to not be a very nice person. I was cruel. I was manipulative. I did not show positive emotions or vulnerability. I thought that being in a loving, caring relationship was weak. I did not want people to be happy with me. I wanted people to have trauma bonds with me, essentially. I didn't know what the term was at the time, but I used fear and I used control and I used power dynamics to make sure that I had the upper hand and to make sure that they wanted to be with me. I tried to push people until essentially they broke because I wanted to see how far I could exploit their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities. And a lot of that was just because I felt so out of control in my own life that I tried to be the one in control in the relationship. But that just led to so much chaos and turmoil and just a lot of pain for both parties. And none of us needed that.
So were you aware at the time that you were like manipulating people?
I was definitely very aware of the time. I get that question a lot. Do narcissists know when they're intentionally hurting others? A lot of them don't. I did, and I think that's because I always had an interest in psychology, and I was always very hyper aware of my behaviors. I lack self-awareness in some of the unintentional things I did that hurt people. Like, I had a huge issue with entitlement and feeling like I was owed certain things, and I had a huge issue with selfishness or a disregard for other people's feelings. So if something was wrong with me, I would just totally put other people to the wayside and just be like, oh, me. So those things, I had no realization of what I was doing. But the manipulative things where I was trying to get people to fear me or to push people until they broke, yeah, I was very much aware of that.
So, like, in terms of relationship, what was that, the narrative that you were describing earlier about like wanting people to be miserable, was that something that you were consciously thinking as well? Or is that like you recognize that in hindsight? Okay.
Yeah, I was consciously aware that I wanted people to be miserable. I did not want them to be happy with me. Anytime I did get close to someone and they started to show positivity or be like, oh, I'm so happy in this, I love you, boom, I'd shut it down. I would push them away. I would start a fight. I would say something cruel. I would ignore them for days on end and watch the texts pile up. And I would get this like smug sense of satisfaction and pride out of it.
It's so interesting because I can relate to a lot of the behaviors, but not to the awareness part. Like when I was feeling badly, everything is about me and hurting other people, but it was always my motivations as I remember them were kind of from I think there is some control there, but it's a lot of like, if I hurt you enough, then you'll understand what I feel like.
100%.
Which is so interesting because, you know, I know there's a lot of people who say you can't have BPD or NPD, or those are like absolute polar opposites. And I feel like I have BPD and like, I'm just cluster B. Like, I feel like I have BPD and like traits of everything else because, you know, I'm also I've had a history of being very histrionic. I have dressed eccentrically for the sake of people looking at me. And, you know, all these other things, like really needing attention, right? It's not like there's these super hard lines between these disorders. So it's so interesting to hear you talk about this because even though I don't think I've had, like, I want someone to be miserable, I always told myself I wanted them to be happy. But a lot of the behaviors I engaged in definitely communicated the opposite.
Yeah.
It's really interesting what you've both said about the overlap between disorders in cluster B. And although my other personality disorder is cluster A, not cluster B, I have definitely found in certain circumstances I've not really felt, I don't want to say I've not felt welcome in the BPD community, but I've definitely struggled to find my place. And I was wondering, Kylee, whether that's been a similar situation for you with having NPD as well as BPD?
Yeah, I find that on certain social media platforms that there's a lot of solidarity between the cluster B community in regards to BPD. I've seen a lot of BPD creators not actively talk about NPD in a very nice way. A few mutuals of mine that had BPD, they blocked me right when I got my NPD diagnosis and revealed it. So it seems like a lot of borderlines hate narcissists because a lot of them, I've made videos before. I asked, like, so to those who hate narcissists, why? And a lot of people with BPD commented saying how they were abused by a narcissist. And were they actually diagnosed? I don't know. They might have just been armchair diagnosing them. But it's this weird feud between borderlines and narcissists. And I don't understand the whole reason as to why. I don't know if it's because borderlines, they tend to try to shy away from their narc traits, because a lot of borderlines do have narc traits. It's not this rare phenomenon. A lot of people do have it. It's just a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it.
I've always believed that extreme self-hate is just a flip side of the extreme grandiosity, because it's still, in a way, it's still thinking you're special. Like, I used to think of myself as like the most effed up person in the world. No one can save me. But in a way, it's just another way of saying, how special am I? Right? Like, I'm so special. No one is capable of fixing this absolute broken mess. Right? I am so far beyond what anyone could imagine. There's no way anyone can do anything to help me. And I'm like, but is that really all that different from thinking that you're above everyone else in a grandiose way? To me, they're just two sides of the same coin.
I want to add to that. So for covert narcissists, because there's different subtypes of narcissists, that's actually the entitlement that covert narcissists have. Oh, I'm so broken. I am the victim. Why do people have such better lives than me? I deserve better. And that's the entitlement that I have. So yeah, BPD and MPD, they have a lot of overlap.
If I can just hop in on this one, I feel like it's a good opportunity to ask how you feel about the name of narcissistic personality disorder, because I have seen that there are some debates out there about possibly changing the name or changing the definition of narcissistic personality disorder, and was wondering what your perspective was on that.
I mean, I don't see a problem with the name narcissistic personality disorder. I do see the problem with the word narcissist getting thrown around so much as it is, because a lot of people don't know the meaning. I get comments every single day of people being like, wait, that's a disorder. I didn't even realize that was a disorder. I just thought it was a toxic person, and things of that nature. I get a lot of people thinking narcissists are just cheaters or liars, or basically any negative connotation of a person. They assume that's what a narcissist is, when in reality, a narcissist is someone who has the 9 MPD criteria, and a lot of people don't even know that. So it's not so much the name, it's just the misinformation that gets spread.
What were your friendships like before you got therapy for your NPD?
I never really understood the need for friendships. I always grew up feeling like that was a chore. I still have no desire to really make friendships or platonic connections, and that's something I'm working on in therapy. I currently live with my partner. Growing up, any platonic friendships I did have, they always turned romantic, or they were just very superficial and transactional. So that's something that I never really even navigated on, because I always just had romantic partnerships or romantic flings.
Are you close to any of your family members, and what do those relationships look like?
I'm close to my immediate family. I don't care enough to talk to my extended family, but my mom, my sister, my dad, we're close in our own ways. I am able to talk to them about mental health, my mom and sister specifically, because they struggle with it themselves. They don't always understand my symptoms, but we have enough of a rapport that we can bounce off each other and be there for each other.
I feel like now might be quite a good time to ask my question about the fact that I do follow content creators for all kinds of disorders, especially cluster B disorders, and MPD is something that I've always found really fascinating. And I've noticed that the content creators that I do follow, there seems to be a little bit of a disparity in the responses to female content creators compared to male content creators. And I only really bring that up because I was speaking to a female content creator quite recently who has essentially been driven off the internet because of the hate that she was receiving. So it was either outright abuse, or it was people doubting that she got MPD because she was, too nice. And I was wondering, do you feel like there's a difference in how male content creators talking about MPD recovery are treated compared to female content creators?
There is absolutely a difference in the way that male MPD creators talk about it. And I think it has to do with a few factors. The male MPD content creators I've seen tend to lean into the whole narcissist or bad stigma, where they make videos about here's how to avoid a narcissist or the red flags of a narcissist. And so people eat that up because they don't have to challenge their preconceptions. Whereas with me, I talk about how I'm in therapy and I'm recovering and trying to heal. And they don't like that because that means they have to look at my videos and be like, oh, I might have dated someone who was a narcissist and they haven't changed. Why is this person changing? Whereas with the male ones who tend to lean into the narrative that the MPD abuse creators are already perpetuating, it's easy for them to latch onto them because they don't have to challenge it as much. I do get a lot of insults off the way that I look. People say that I have narc eyebrows or that I obviously look like a narcissist. And I've noticed that with some cluster B creators who look more conventionally attractive, that they don't tend to get those types of comments. People tend to actually kind of revere them, whether they're male or female. If they're more conventionally attractive, they don't get those types of insults. And that's something that I've noticed.
I want to know what narc eyebrows are.
I get it all the time. People say it's like too Disney villainish. I don't know. Or people make fun of just like my short hair, my tattoos. They're like, oh, obviously you're damaged just by like how I look at you. And it's just like, whatever.
Do you ever have people ask you, do you think this person's a narcissist? Or to kind of, I don't know, just like identify people in the public eye with narcissism? And how far do you lean into that or away from it?
I get DMs all the time of people describing an ex, a family member, being like, hey, does this sound like a narcissist? And I am always like, if you think they're a narcissist, you can talk to them about it. But essentially, the only one who can know for sure is a professional. I'm not a professional. I cannot diagnose someone, especially someone I don't know. Even if I did know them, I do not have the qualifications to do so. Even professionals get it mixed up sometimes. That's why it's good to have second opinions, and that's why it's good to go to a specialist. Even psychologists don't diagnose themselves. They go to other psychologists.
Yeah, the internal bias is, even for yourself, your internal bias is really strong, right? It's, even for the average person, it's hard to overcome that. So...
Yeah, you can't look at yourself the same way as someone who is an outside perspective can, especially someone who is a professional who can look at you and see your symptoms from the outside. It's too close to home when you're trying to diagnose yourself.
In terms of all of the personality disorders, BPD has tons of research and at this point, like, lots and lots of treatment options. I'm curious, what are some of the treatment options that you're aware of for NPD and what's been working for you?
So there's multiple different types of treatment options for NPD. There's nothing that is very specific for it, just like how like DBT is for BPD, but there's transference therapy, there's somatic, there's psychodynamic, there is DBT. You can use DBT for NPD, but it's not specifically for CBT. What's helped me the most was a mixture of DBT, CBT, shadow work, and inner child healing. And currently I'm doing psychodynamic therapy and somatic therapy with my psych, and that has helped just identifying where the emotions are in my body and also trying to process past trauma and work through it in a healthy way. But I did notice when I first got my BPD diagnosis, I was able to go online and see workbooks and resources and articles about how to heal and just different acronyms for DBT and just all these ways. Essentially, if I didn't have a therapist, I could still find coping skills. With NPD, I did not have that. I got my diagnosis and I Googled it, and all I saw was how to avoid a narcissist, how to escape one, how to heal from a narcissist, and all of these things. There was never any resources for someone who actually has NPD, and that was really discouraging. Even still to this day, the other day I tried looking up workbooks for it, found nothing.
You know, as someone with BPD, a lot of us have to deal with shame from our past behaviors. So do you have any shame about your past behaviors?
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance there because with my past behaviors, it feels almost like a different person who did it. I know it was me. I know that I did it, but it's still hard to recognize sometimes that it was me. I do feel guilt and I do feel remorse, but there is still a block. When I do something now that actively hurts someone else, I do feel shame and I do feel guilt and remorse in a more empathetic way than I do when I think back on who I used to be. But yeah. I do feel a lot of shame internally, regardless, just because the crux of my NPD stems from shame and feelings of worthiness. But the shame is more directed at myself and not my actions towards others, but more of how I feel inferior and how I feel less than others and how I feel like I need to prove myself because everything is a competition, everything is a threat. And yeah.
So you're talking about feelings of worthiness. What is envy like for you?
I am an extremely jealous person. That is one of the biggest things I struggle with. I'm pretty much jealous of everything. If someone has an achievement or gets an accomplishment of something, I will be envious or jealous of them. If someone is talking about something they did and they're excited for it, I'll be jealous of them. I'm constantly comparing myself to other people. If someone has a certain hobby they're interested in, even if I don't like it, if they're doing well at it, I'll feel inferior. A lot of it is something I don't voice externally. It's just internalized, but I have to self-soothe and self-regulate and bring myself back down to baseline and be like, no, you are allowed to be happy for this person. But a lot of it is having to feign happiness because inside I don't feel happy for the person. It's more just bringing it back to me and being self-centered, and I have to try to push that aside because I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings.
I can relate to that. I can really relate to that. Well, especially as a content creator. I mean, sometimes it's hard to know how much of this is because I have a cluster B disorder and how much of it is like fed by the social media machine. You have likes and follows and all of these things that sort of measure your worth, and like anytime like a new content creator has come on the scene and they like blow up so much faster, I'm just like, what, I want to die. It's sad, you know, it's like it's so hard. But yeah, so I just want to say, yeah, hard relate.
Yeah.
I do think that that's interesting. Sometimes it's hard to tell like how much of what we experience is disorder based and how much of it is really reinforced by what's around us. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I've known that I've always compared myself to other people. I think social media definitely is something that fuels a lot of envy in people naturally. Social media is used to garner validation and attention, regardless if you have a disorder or not. People post things for attention. If they didn't want attention, they would keep it all private.
Yeah. I did get a comment where somebody was like, and she posted it on the internet for attention and validation. And I was like, well, I didn't like post it to hear myself talk. I could have looked in the mirror for that.
Yep. I get that comment all the time, and it's like, but everyone posts. I mean, even if it's just for like friends or family members, everyone is posting for some sort of reinforcement.
Kylee, do you find that people contact you and say, I've got an NPD diagnosis, but I'm too scared to share that diagnosis and to talk about it publicly? Is that something that you find happens?
I get a lot of people in my DMs saying they think they might be a narcissist based off my content, or I get a lot of the I'm dating a narcissist and what do? I don't get a lot of people with NPD who comment on my stuff. Mainly it's a lot of just armchair diagnosers. That's where like a lot of people, I guess I'm asking you guys, do you guys believe in like narc abuse? I have mixed opinions on it. Like a lot of people that who try to defend me in like my comment section will try to be like, narc abuse isn't real, but like a part of me is like, it kind of can be, I guess. Like, I don't know.
That's a great question, actually. I think I have mixed feelings about it also, because on the one hand, diagnoses exist for a reason, right? They are, while they do vary significantly from person to person, they are a clearly outlined set of behaviors, right? And those sets of behaviors will lead to certain relatively predictable patterns of behavior. Mm-hmm. And so based on that, you could say that if there are patterns that are patterns of abuse that are prevalent in relationships with someone with NPD, you could argue that those specific behaviors are narc abuse. But I also think that abuse itself has certain patterns of that happen regardless of whether or not somebody has NPD.
Yeah.
And so I think what irks me is that I think focusing on the label narc abuse is not helpful, because what you're focusing on there is that the person has NPD, not calling out and specifically labeling the behaviors that they're engaging in, and identifying those things first. And so whether there is a difference or not, I think it's probably just more effective to separate that out from the label of narcissist, because like lots of people will engage in abusive behavior whether they have NPD, BPD, or no psychological disorder diagnosis.
Yeah.
One of the things that just occurs to me is that earlier you're talking about certain behaviors that you had a awareness of, and I can see myself acting out some of those same things, but for totally different reasons, right? And so that's where also I feel like narc abuse is maybe not the best term, because I think you can have two people acting out identical behaviors but who have very different motivations, and because the motivation is different, the way that you attack the problem is also going to have to be different, because ultimately the root is something you don't see, but the root determines everything. And so that's another thing where I'm like, is this the most effective term? Because I just don't know.
Like, my partner has ASPD, and he had a lot of similar behaviors that I did, because before therapy, he was not a very nice person either. And when he talks about his old behaviors, he had totally different intentions, but the same behaviors, manifested. So, that's also where it was interesting, because totally different intent, but same behaviors.
I guess I wonder what's the motivation to give it that name. I think people do that for excuse to dehumanize someone. And that's where it's like, then is it effective? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Because if you call someone a narcissist, you're essentially, if they're not diagnosed and you're calling someone a narcissist, you're basically unloading every single bad problem of the relationship onto them. And you're not looking within. Yes, people can be abused by narcissists, and they can be abused by people with any disorder. But that also kind of is a way of not healing, because if you're just focusing on the narcissist and reading up on narc abuse and not actually healing from that abuse, whatever it was, you're not putting an emphasis on your own growth and healing journey.
Well, I think I was guilty of doing that. So the family member that I cut ties with, when the drama first happened, I was like, okay, she definitely has NPD, and I decided that I hated her for it. And I hated anybody who had NPD, because I had it in my mind that they're all abusive assholes and they'll never change. And I wasn't focused on healing myself and moving on with my life. I was just focused on, they have this NPD. I've decided they have it. And so obviously everybody else with NPD is a terrible person too. So I guess I just put everyone in that box of they are unworthy. And it was really just me wanting to find a reason why they hurt me, and who knows what is wrong with my family member, but it's not my problem. It doesn't matter.
When I was abused by someone with MPD, I did not have my MPD diagnosis yet. And that kind of gave me some sense of solace, because I was like, oh, they have MPD, therefore they're never going to change. They're never going to get better. It wasn't my fault. I can walk away from this knowing that I tried the best I could, and it's all them. And then when I got my empathy diagnosis, I realized it's more convoluted than that. And also, I was putting so much hate and emphasis on them and not focusing on myself that I realized I still had work to do regardless of them. Everyone has things they can work on and improve.
We're talking a lot about labels, and I think one of the things that's sort of been touched on in all these different circumstances is that what makes a label easier is that you can say like you both said, well, it wasn't me, there's nothing I could have done, they were never going to change anyway, so whatever. That's a very black or white thought, which to some degree is adaptive. When people leave relationships, you hear this all the time, I'm better off without that jerk, whatever, even if there's no mental health issues involved, right? People devalue each other sometimes to get through these moments. But when it becomes a bigger thing, it's what people aren't realizing is that there are shades of gray to this. And I think it can be much more painful for people to accept that someone could have changed, but they chose not to. That is really painful, because I think that makes people think, why wasn't I enough? Why was I not worth them putting in that effort? And that can be so painful that it's just easier to think they were never capable of it. They're evil from the beginning. I'm done. Goodbye.
I get that comment a lot, like, why are you able to change, but the person who abused me isn't able to? And I don't have an answer for that. Some people aren't able to look within and take accountability. And even I struggle with that. When I got my diagnosis, I was like, okay, I'm in therapy and healing. Why is the person who abused me, why can't they do that? Why can't they acknowledge it? I never got closure from them. I never got an apology. I never will. So I had to accept that and come to terms with it. And that was a difficult pill to swallow. And I'm still healing from that relationship and still reeling from the abuse from that. And feeling like it'd be easier to just say, oh, they have a disorder that they can't change from. But because I have the same disorder and I am healing, it is hard to even justify that anymore. It's just, they are who they are and they decided to do what they did. And I had to accept that.
So I think I've heard you say before, Kylee, that your relationship with your partner is like one of the most healthiest ones that you've had. So why do you think that is?
After my abusive relationship, I was in therapy for quite a few years, and my partner is the first person I've dated since then. And I worked on myself a lot. I worked on how to have effective conflict resolution, how to work on self-soothing and self-regulation. And I've learned how to even express vulnerability. And because we have similar disorders where they're not the same, but they have overlapping symptoms, we understand each other on a deeper level, and we're able to look at each other without judgment or enablement. So I can say something to him where someone without MPD, they might think that's offensive or rude, whereas he'll be like, okay, well, he understands, and we don't promote toxicity. If someone does something where their behaviors resurface, we'll be like, okay, we're going to talk about it. And then next week in your psych appointment, you should probably bring it up because we don't want this to happen again. And so there's a lot of work being done on both sides. And that's almost healthier than people who are in relationships and they're not working on themselves, because everyone has stuff to work on. And I think it's healthy for anyone to address the things that they can improve on, because everyone does. And if someone thinks they don't have things to improve on, they definitely do.
What would you say is your, like, the NPD trait that you struggle with the most in terms of your relationship with your partner, and what is like your main coping skill for that?
I would have said jealousy is the main thing I struggle with, but now that him and I have been living together for a while now, I would say entitlement. Him and I just had a conversation the other day about the fact that I still relate a lot of things back to me in arguments, or I expect him to do things for me, whereas I didn't even realize that I did, but when he brought it back to me, I was like, oh, wow, you're right. And so we're working more on the fact that, or I'm working on how to bring that up to my psyche and to start to be more self-reliant and to start to look within and start noticing patterns. So now I'm writing patterns down and writing down things that I know I need to address and acknowledge, and not to put everything onto him. And also to make sure that I listen to him more and to have a more open dialogue so that everything isn't always going back to me. Sometimes my MPD will flare up, especially right before my period, because I have PMDD. So my PMS symptoms just make my mental health symptoms skyrocket. And so I'll go into like MPD defense mode, where I'll automatically just start assuming that he's lying to me and he's manipulating me. And my brain will start thinking of all these ways of how to use them transactionally and how to like benefit from the relationship. And so for a few days, I'll just be really closed off. And it kind of reminds me of like a borderline split, where it's like all of a sudden you go from like 0 to 100. It's not like that, but it's more of like this like seething, like just distrust for him. And it's not even anywhere near rational, but I have to kind of bring myself down and regulate and be like, no, he's fine. He's not doing anything wrong. It's me, and it's my defense is flaring up, and I have to learn how to bring him back down again.
I'm nodding vigorously because I also have PMDD, and that's the only time that I really feel like anything's a real struggle. And so I don't even really know if I would call it BPD at that point, because it's just more like more dysregulation. But you know, those things flare up and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
I feel like a crazy person. I was fine yesterday. What is happening?
Yep.
It's hormones.
Yeah, my impulse control with PMDD, it's basically none. Currently I have it, and yesterday it was really bad, where I was I used to do the whole like block, unblock, or like the constantly breaking up with someone thing. I haven't done that with him, but yesterday I did almost break up with him because my brain decided that would be a good idea. And I know it was my PMDD, so I had to talk myself down and be like, no, stop. But I was a hot mess all day. So I think PMDD really can exaggerate mental health symptoms. So I kind of urge anyone to look into that if you are someone who menstruates, just because a lot of people have it and they don't realize they have it. And when I got diagnosed with it, I realized like, wow, this actually like explains so much. And so like I keep track of it. I don't take any medicine for it, but I keep track of it, and it's helped. So then I know at least when around the time I'm going to have my little, I don't want to call them crazy moments, but I guess that's kind of what they feel like. And so like it helps kind of bring back down and be like, no, this is what this is.
Yeah, Tracker has changed my life. I always felt like it was so hard to make progress because every month it felt like there was this 1 week that was setting me back.
Yeah.
And then when I got the Tracker and I had some more DBT skills, it's like, if I'm a little bit snappy to my husband, I'll just be like, oh, wait. And I look at the Tracker and then I'm like, oh, okay. I know what's happening.
Yep.
I can, sorry, hubby. It's just, that time. And then I just curl in a ball. Yeah.
So I have a question about BPD and MPD. And am I right in thinking you would describe yourself as like a covert narcissist?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Do you find that has a lot of overlap with BPD in terms of how your symptoms present compared to, say, the more grandiose type?
Yeah, covert narcissists and borderlines from the outside, they look so similar, and it's really hard to distinguish the two unless you're a professional. The difference is with covert entitlement and grandiosity that is not present in borderlines, but the outside symptoms, they definitely have so much overlap and so much manifestation of each other where it's really hard to differentiate.
It's very interesting, like, you've talked a lot about entitlement, and it's also something that I relate to, but in such a different way. It's never been, like, something that I was ever aware of. It's just, like, when my emotions are big, it feels like things need to cater to my emotions, not because I deserve it, but just because it's, like, I don't think I can survive through this moment if other people don't accommodate my feelings. I don't know how that's the rationale. It's like, if you don't make this softer for me, how am I going to live through this moment?
100%. Yep.
And then I look at it afterwards and I'm like, oh man, that was...
Yeah.
I know, yeah, I bet we're all sitting here in silence thinking, oh God, do we all have MPD? And we just never knew.
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't think the lines are super solid, right? I mean, one of the things that they taught me in school in abnormal psych was if you're diagnosed with one personality disorder, you more than certainly have at least traits of another one. So
as you were talking, I was thinking about empathy, because although lack of empathy is not a diagnostic criteria for schizotypal personality disorder, because of the interpersonal difficulties and the social problems and the flat affect and not being able to really feel emotions deeply, I do feel that has a knock-on effect for me with empathy. So I would say that I do struggle quite a lot with effective empathy. So if someone is in front of me and they're upset, I won't feel what they're feeling, even though logically I can understand how and why they feel the way that they do. So for you, how does empathy look and how does it feel?
So a lot of people confuse a lack of empathy, meaning I don't have any at all. I do have empathy. I just have more cognitive empathy than effective empathy. I'm able to intellectualize and rationalize why someone is feeling a certain way, but it's hard for me to emotionally have a reaction from it. But a lot of people have high cognitive empathy and they aren't narcissists. So a lack of empathy can be present just depending on the situation and if they're triggered by something or... Yeah, so it's not exclusive to narcissism. My partner who has ASBD, he struggles with empathy as well. And so empathy is a tricky one where a lot of people think that if you have a lack of empathy, it means you're not a good person or you don't care about others or you're not compassionate. And I do care about others and I show compassion and love in my own way. It may not look the same as a non-narcissist or someone who has more empathy than me, but I do exhibit it in ways where the people around me do feel loved and cared for.
Well, I like that you mentioned like the situational difference, because that's one thing that's very true for me. Like if I'm emotionally activated in a negative way, I'm totally focused on my own feelings, right? It is very hard for me. Well, not anymore, but it used to, at the height of my BPD, it was very difficult for me to see anybody else's feelings. But if somebody's coming to me with their own problem, I'm the opposite of you, Katja. Like, if somebody comes to me crying, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you know? But, like, if they were upset with me, I would be really defensive, right? So the situational thing really makes a difference, I think. Like, the context of the situation. And you're right, it's like, you might have low empathy in a certain context and high empathy in another context. It's not like it's across the board.
Yeah, I get that comment a lot where you can't have BPD and MPD because borderlines have so much empathy and narcissists have none, where it's not so black and white. There is differences, and sometimes narcissists do exhibit empathy in situations where borderlines cannot, and vice versa, and therefore it is not so cut and dry.
Yeah, everybody wants things to be in nice, neat little boxes, so it's easy to understand. But unfortunately, there are very few things in life in which that is true.
Yep. Not really a question, but I do have an observation, which is I think that in today's climate and the attitudes towards MPD, I think you are so courageous to stick your head above the parapet and actually do what you do. Like, I could not create content on my disorder the way that you do and like be able to cope with the backlash. And I think a sign that you are doing your job really well is that I have noticed since you returned to social media, initially there was an onslaught of just constant negativity, and actually over the last few months, I don't know whether you agree, but it's slowly starting to fade, and there's a lot more positivity and neutrality which is coming in there. And there are people saying, you know what, you are educating me, you are challenging my beliefs, you are encouraging me to think in a different way. And we need people like that in the mental illness field to challenge stigma. And the fact that you've been able to do that and stand up for people who need it and people who need treatment, that is actually something to be really proud of, that you are challenging those stereotypes.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's, you know, one of the thoughts that I've had, like when I've been on your page and seen some of the negative things that people say, I'm like, well, why would anybody seek treatment for this if that's the reaction they're going to get from people, right? Like if the attitude is you are doomed to fail, you can't get better, why would somebody try?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So I just wanted to echo what Katja said, and that I'm so impressed, and I'm so grateful that you're on the scene sharing this stuff, because destigmatizing all mental health disorders is something that is important, as an important value to me, and I think to a lot of other cast members and people out there. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom you want to share with the audience?
I guess to challenge your preconceptions. If you see a MPD creator or even someone with a disorder that you don't know much about, and you have heard different narratives online about it, just listen to what they have to say and challenge your presumptions, because they might surprise you.
Well, thank you so much for coming to share your experience and wisdom. We were so excited to have you, and this was a really great conversation. So thank you for coming, and thank you everyone to our audience for watching. We hope you got a nugget of wisdom to take with you on your journey. Hopefully you heard something to challenge your preconceptions. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so that you do not miss a single episode. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.